I had someone come into my chat the other day asking me what a tempo bro was because they were new and they didn't know. I feel like I answered their question pretty well, only to find that, and then another stream that I had, another person asked the same question. And then when I went into other streamers' chats, other people also asked them the exact same question. There isn't really a good answer for this online. Reddit's pretty unhelpful, and there aren't any good YouTube videos that I'm aware of that are explaining this concept. So I'd figure I'd go ahead and explain this to you guys so that you guys know what a tempo bro is in Battle Brothers. The origin of the term tempo actually comes from music. It comes from the tempo of a song, how quickly the song is played. A song that had a tempo of would actually have a slower tempo than a song that was played at this beat. That's what it means in music. It's not necessarily referencing time itself. It's just like a weird distorted view of time that we don't normally use. Kind of abstract, but that's the origin of the term. At some point, people started using the term tempo in regards to strategy games. I don't know what or who first did this, but I know that it's definitely existed in chess for quite a while. So that's probably where we're going to start. And then once we understand what tempo means in the context of strategy games, then we can apply this to Battle Brothers. So we're here at the chessboard. This is a chessboard. This is how a chessboard might normally be set up, right? This is a normal setup for a game of chess. I'd be playing white, you'd be playing black. A normal game might kind of look something like this. This is a pretty standard thing. You move here, I develop my other knight, you develop this knight. This is the four knights game. There are a bunch of different ways to get here, but this is the gist of it. We're here in the four knights, and as you can see, I have 3 pieces out, you have 3 pieces out. This is a pretty standard game. No one's really ahead of anybody other than the fact that I'm white and I get to go first. But let's say, for whatever reason, you came over to my place and you were like, hey, let's play some chess. And I said, I had a deal for you. Okay, how about I take this pawn off, you take this pawn off, and we start the game like this, and it's your turn. Would you accept that deal? Right? Well, it might look fine at the start, but as you look and see, I have 2 pieces out and you have none. I'm ahead in development. It's almost as if I've given myself 2 turns. So you'd probably say, hey, look, that's horseshit. I'm not going to play your stupid fucking game. Let's play chess normally. And then I said, okay, all right, cool. Let's not do that. Let's do it this way. Okay. If that were the case, and I played e4, a game like this might happen if you chose to play the Scandinavian defense. The Scandinavian defense is d5. You're attacking my center pawn with your center pawn because pawns attack diagonally. I'm incentivized to capture here, and then you bring the queen out to capture in the center. Okay. Now, at first, this looks like an absolute haymaker. The problem is the queen isn't really threatening all that much, and I can do what's called a tempo move here to force the queen away. I can move my knight to c3 here. The knight is attacking the queen, and the queen is not attacking the knight. Oh, God damn it. The queen is not attacking the knight, right? The queen isn't really attacking anything. The knight is demanding that the queen has to move. Sometimes the queen will move here, or it'll move here with a check, and then you can either block with the queen, offer a queen trade, or block with the bishop. Not a whole lot is really accomplished here by black doing this. So a pretty common move is actually for the queen to move back to its starting square. Well, if that happens, then white can respond in kind with something like this. And hey, wouldn't you know it? We're in the same exact position that I started in, except this time we got here through your own moves. This happened because you allowed me an opportunity to gain tempo on you. I was able to play a move that forced you to undo a move that you did previously, basically putting me ahead. I have 2 pieces on the board, out, like active in the center, and you have none. You could move your bishop out here to, help develop your piece, but I can respond by putting my own bishop out here. I still have 2 pieces ahead of you. You can move this knight out here and do that, and that's probably fine. I could castle, or I could bring this pawn out, or I could do any number of those things, but the fact remains that I'm still 2 moves ahead of you. And that really sucks for you. Now, that doesn't mean that the game is over, and you can still definitely win from this position. A lot of people play the Scandinavian defense with black, and they're able to win just fine. It just means that I have an advantage. I'm basically playing ahead of you. I'm ahead on tempo, and you're behind on tempo. Now we're at the whiteboard. It's time to do some fucking learning. Okay, so tempo bros, they're a little bit confusing. That's what tempo means in music and what it means in chess. Strategy games in general, the definition that I'm going to go with is now, this definition has the word inside of it, which you're not supposed to do, but I'm doing it anyway because I don't know how else to say it. And whenever I tried to Google what this is, I couldn't really find a definition that worked well, so this is what you guys get. This is what tempo means in strategy games, right? In Battle Brothers, while you can gain tempo by doing things like stunning the enemy so that they lose a turn, or disarming them with a whip, or whatever, tempo usually is referring to how we build bros, right? How we build bros. Okay, so you can build a bro in a tempo fashion, right? Or in a non-tempo fashion. So you can build a bro in a way that makes it so that each perk that he takes and each stat increase that he takes, you're getting the most value out of him as you possibly can in the present versus worrying about late game synergy, right? A good tempo move or good tempo decision would be a decision that ultimately results in being ahead of the game, and a bad tempo move or decision would put you behind the curve, right? In the context of Battle Brothers, a bad tempo perk to take would be a perk like Student, right? Student gives you a 20% boost to the XP that you gain in exchange for a perk, and at level 11, you get that point back, and you can spend it on another perk. But that means that you're effectively down a perk for the first 10 levels, which is probably the first, 70 to 100 days of the game for you. So that means that that bro is going to be down a perk for the entirety of the run, pretty much. Now, that isn't to say that it's not useful to take students to get to the mid levels in the mid game, but imagine this. It's a new run. It's day 1, and you hire your first few bros. They're fishermen, daytailers, beggars, refugees. They suck. You look at their stats. They all suck. And you know, and you look at them and you know that their time with this company is pretty short, and they're probably not going to make it to the late game, okay? There's a way that you can build these bros so that you can actually get towards the end game content and experience the majority of the game. It just means that, you can't really build them into late game builds, but you can do something with them, right? So the question is basically how can we get the most use out of these bros who are definitely going to die in the short term, right? Tempo isn't a specific build. Tempo does not equal build. Tempo equals philosophy, right? Building a tempo bro is a philosophy, right? It's an approach. It's the idea of trying to make it so that the perks that you do take on this guy make the most impact now in the present for the next fight, okay? It's not about necessarily what is the correct tempo build. There is no correct tempo build. It doesn't exist. Now, you might go into a streamer's chat or find a YouTuber's video on how they build their early bros, right? And they might tell you, take 9 lives, take fast adaptation. You have to take these in this order. This is how it has to be done. It's not really the case. There are a bunch of different ways that a tempo bro could potentially exist, right? So there's no objectively correct tempo build, but that doesn't mean just because there aren't any right answers doesn't mean that there aren't any wrong answers, right? So let's go over some wrong answers, shall we? Okay, so the first wrong answer that comes to mind is something that I've already kind of talked about. Sorry, I just moved my laundry hamper out of the way. Wrong answers. Okay. Wrong answers. The first one is student. Okay. Now, this is a noob trap that I fell into, and I fell into for a while. And whenever I go and check out new players, almost always, when I ask them what sorts of perks they take, they say, I take student at level 1 on every single bro because I want to get more XP, and it feels really good, right? There's an argument to doing that later on in the mid game. If you find a bro who has a lot of potential and you want to try to get him as leveled as quickly as possible, there's definitely an argument to doing that then. But on day 1 or day 3, the first 10 days, this first wave of bros should basically never take student. In 90 to 95% of cases, you would have to have a very, very, very good reason to take student. Most of the time, it is just objectively not the strat, okay? Because think about it. When the game calculates what enemy to put at a certain location when you take a contract, it calculates how difficult the combat should be based off of your 12 strongest guys, which means for the game, the guys with the most levels, your 12 highest level bros. So your level 2 bro who has stat increases in student is being read by the game as a level 2 bro. So if you give student on all your guys on level 1, your party is basically still 12 level 1s plebs who are scrubs, but the game is reading that as double the power because they all have a level, even though the perk isn't doing anything for them now, right? So that would be an example of a wrong answer of a way not to build a tempo bro, right? Another example of a wrong answer would be something like, okay, how to put this to. You get a guy with high fatigue and high melee defense in the first 10 days of the campaign, and you're like, I want to turn this guy into a Battleforge tank one day. So, therefore, Battleforge tanks need recover. Therefore, take recover at level 1. This is a wrong answer, okay? This is not the move, guys. Okay, you don't really want to do this. The reason is because recover doesn't do jack shit for you at first level in the early parts of the campaign. It just literally doesn't. You don't have the gear that's really going to accumulate a lot of fatigue. By the time you would get to the point where your bros are running out of fatigue and they can't do anything, you're either already dead to the things that are still trying to kill you, or the battle's already over and there's still just a couple stragglers left, right? The battles in the first few days of the campaign are decided within the first 4 to 5 rounds, just because of how weak everything is and how quickly everything dies. So recover isn't going to do shit for you at level 1. Alternatively, you could take something like Colossus, which is something a Battleforge tank would want, at the end of its levels, but it would also want it on day 1, right? Does that make sense? A third example of how not to build a tempo bro would be take crippling strikes. Crippling strikes is a bad perk. Multiple people who are much better at the game than me have tried to make crippling strikes work, and they were unsuccessful at doing so. They couldn't get it going. They couldn't make crippling strikes really valuable. It is absolutely not worth a perk point. It doesn't do enough in the first few days of do enough at all to justify using it. I could go on and on about why crippling strikes is bad. I've tried it myself. It's not good. Just never take crippling strikes. These 3 would be examples of how to build tempo bros incorrectly, or how not to understand the philosophy of building a tempo bro, right? Now, I have for you guys lists of possible tempo perks that you can take, and then I have some builds to go over with you guys later, okay? So let's erase this stuff. All right, so this is a list. I have 2 lists. This is one list, and this is the other list, okay? This list says tempo perks, right? Colossus, 9 lives, fast adaptation, dodge, quick hands, gifted, backstabber, shield expert. These are all, in my opinion, tempo perks that you can pretty much mindlessly take, with the exception of maybe shield expert. I probably wouldn't take that on a guy that you're not going to put a shield on. But, like, if you mindlessly took all these as tempo perks for your tempo builds, you'd probably be fine, right? Because they're all impactful enough. Like Colossus, more HP, injury prevention, 9 lives, helps your survivability. Fast adaptation makes your guys with 50 melee attack actually able to hit fucking something. Dodge, huge boost to melee defense, increases survivability. Quick hands, amazing utility, especially for throwers. Gifted, Freeble stats, right? Backstabber, more likely to hit shit. Shield expert, more likely to survive stuff, right? Now, I have another list here. These are also maybe tempo perks, right? And the difference here is on this list, we have Pathfinder, Fortified Mind, Executioner, Rotate, Relentless, Taunt, Anticipation, and Weapon Masteries, okay? Now, these are not in this list because I don't consider these tempo perks unless you have a good reason to put them on a specific bro. For example, Fortified Mind. I would never put this on a regular tempo bro for no reason. However, if I had a guy who had like 15 or 20 resolve and he was fleeing every battle, I might take Fortified Mind at 3rd or 4th level on this guy as a patch perk, right? To kind of fix a problem that he has so that he's more usable. Especially if he has something like Paranoid as a trait, which would make dodge much worse, then I might take Fortified Mind, right? Another example would be Relentless, right? Relentless is something that you would want on a guy with really good initiative who you're really planning on getting a lot of value out of dodge from, right? Most guys have enough initiative that just taking dodge on its own is enough of a boost to get the job done, right? But if you're planning on building this guy into like a nimble dodge sort of damage dealer sort of guy, then Relentless really gets a lot of value, right? Something like Rotate, a lot of people consider it a bad perk, right? But, if you have a tempo banner, you're not really sure what perk to give him. Maybe give him Rotate if he has enough melee defense to where you could swap him out. Not the best use of a banner. I've also done thrower rotato builds where their job is to throw stuff, and then when a guy starts to get fucked up, they rotates in with the shield. These sorts of things. Anticipation, very good perk, but you're only going to want to take it on guys you actively want to act as pin cushions for enemy archers. And then weapon masteries, you would want to take that if you have a really good weapon or a guy who's really suited for a specific weapon that you want to save that fatigue from, or if you get the point. These you don't necessarily need a good reason for, right? These you do need a good reason for. Does that make sense? That's the gist. There are plenty of perks that are further on the perk tree that you could take on tempo bros, right? But they're not going to get access to those perks until 5th, 6th, 7th level. And at that point, are they really tempo bros? Because it's like 35, 40 at this point, unless you're just really snowballing it pretty hard. Like at that point, you would pivot them into something that is usable later on in the game, right? If they started lasting that long. So, in my opinion, the first 5 to 6 perks that you would take are the things that matter on the Tempo Bro. It kind of doesn't really matter too much after that, but you might want to take Berserk, Fearsome, or Nimble, some combination of those things. These guys probably aren't going to make it till that point anyway because their stats suck, right? And you're just trying to make whatever use you can out of them. That's the gist of the Tempo philosophy, the Tempo Bro philosophy, okay? So once again, these you can pretty much take mindlessly. These, you need a good reason to take them. But if you have a good reason, then they're very good. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now let's go over some example builds. Not the objectively correct builds, example builds, okay? Okay, let's go over some example builds for Tempo Bros, okay? So I actually reached out to a few streamers and got their opinions on how they build Tempo Bros. I only reached out to 4, and I'm going to give credit to them. If I didn't reach out to you, no shade, no hard feelings. The people I reached out to were just people that I respected and that people I knew were better than me. And I wanted to get a wide variety of opinions, and I wanted to, make sure that I knew who they were. So the people that I chose were Some Weird Sins, Slugzoo, Autosama, and Slurgy. Those are the 4 I reached out to. If you have your 2 cents that you want to give on Tempo Bros and you feel like, you want to contribute to this, I'll absolutely, include you in the next series. If you want to reach out to me, totally chill, right? But these are the guys that we have for right now. The first guy I want to go over is a guy called Some Weird Sins. Some Weird Sins is he's definitely in the discussion for greatest of all time Battle Brothers players. Maybe he doesn't have the number 1 spot, but he's definitely up there. The guy's really, really insane. So I want to put a lot of emphasis on Some Weird Sins, and we're gonna go over Some Weird Sins Zergling build first. I originally reached out to Slugzoo, and Slugzoo actually told me that he got his builds from Some Weird Sins originally, like the Zergling moniker. And I actually have his little quote here. So Slugzoo is like, he got the moniker for Some Weird Sins. The Zergling opener, you go fast adaptation, right? 9 lives, gifted, then dodge, and then Colossus, and then nimble. And then you branch out. Pathfinder and Fearsome are quite strong, is the 2 things that Slugzoo said, right? About how he builds his guys. I have Some Weird Sins guide right here for the Zergling, right? And let's go to that. Here it is, right? So here's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 perks. Some Weird Sins has Duelist here. This is an older document, but I'm sure that this sort of thing still holds up. He doesn't even have anything for the benchmark statistics in this document. This is called the Copy of Sins Battle Brothers Guide. This should be pretty easy to find online somewhere. If you guys want to look at that, he has a whole breakdown of a bunch of stuff. But this is how he builds Zerglings, right? And this is how Slugzoo kind of adopted it. And just the basic idea is just you take these perks until you get nimble. And once you're there, right, once your bros are hitting level 7, level 8, level 9, either your Zerglings are dead, right, or you have found premium bros that you can actually turn into legit builds in the late game. So, I mean, I think that whatever picks you take 8th, 9th, and 10th level don't really matter too much. Although you can beat the game with just 12 Zerglings if you'd like. That's totally up to you and your choice. It's hard for me to do, at least. So I can't tell you that that's really the way to go. When I reached out to Some Weird Sins about it, he was very supportive. And he mentioned that Nimble Tanks and the Protector build are also really good tempo builds. So let's go to those. So this is the Protector build, and I guess the intention with this guy is he's meant to protect guys who are, more valuable through the use of a shield and through the use of Mace Mastery to try to stun guys, right? Having this makes it so that it's easier to keep your bros alive, because whenever you hit with a mace, you always stun. This is not a tank because he still needs solid melee attack. This is just kind of the bastardization. There is a flex perk here, and I'll show you that in Sin's Guide over here. Where is it? Here it is. For this, the green perks are what he recommends you absolutely take, right? Or let me do this. The green perks are what he absolutely recommends that you take, and the yellow perks are the flex perks. So you have one choice to make between fast adaptation, 9 lives, or fortified mind. I guess for me it depends on like how many guys you have who are built like this and what the rest of your formation is like. That makes it context dependent. I think taking Colossus and 9 lives is a good choice on any frontline bro. So if you just don't want to think about that at all, taking 9 lives is fine. So that's the protector build, right? This is a tempo bro. So you're already seeing that, like, you know, we've already gone over a couple builds. They're all fine. They are all fine to use as tempo bros. You can build them really however you like, and these are just some templates that you can go over, right? So he also suggested the nimble tank, right? And this is what he has for nimble tank, right? These are the mandatory perks. I guess the idea with this guy is in the early game, you send out the tank to, you know, draw enemy aggro and keep them busy, making sure that you have Lone Wolf turned on so that he gets the bonus to all of his stats. And the bags and belts is just to have extra slots for shields, anticipating that a shield is going to break here or there. That would be, you know, that's my current understanding. That's not the case. You can reach out to me. These are the mandatory perks for this build, and the flex perk for Nimble Tank is your choice between one of these 5. So you could either do Pathfinder, you could do 9 lives, Fortified Mind, Steel Brow, or Resilient. Up to you. Totally your choice. I'd probably take 9 lives if it were me, but that's neither here nor there. If you like any of these, that's totally acceptable. Okay, so Sins uses a combination of Zerglings, Protectors, and Nimble Tanks. That's what he recommends. Okay, so that's the top guy, right? So he's objectively much better than I'll ever be at the game. So if you don't want to listen to what anybody else has to say, you can listen to what Sins says, and you'll do fine. Okay, so that's the first guy. The next guy is Slugzoo, right? And Slugzoo, right? I can't believe I'm doing this. But Slugzoo uses the Zerglings, right? And he didn't he didn't message me about this, but I watched one of his streams, and I thought this is a perfect example of a tempo bro. Okay, so this guy is just a scrub, right? His stats really don't matter. If you hire a beggar or a refugee who just absolutely sucks, and you have to find some use for him, you can give him bags and belts and quick hands. And those are the only 2 things that matter, really. And you just give him a bunch of nets. And his job is to just run around the battlefield and throw nets on dudes, okay? And if you do that, then that is a tempo bro. It is, you know, this is an example of just using the philosophy of tempo bros, which I think was, you know, really cool. I don't know if Slugzoo was the originator of the net boy strategy, but this was the first time that I saw it, and this is how he builds them. If you claim ownership of the net boy build, please reach out to me, and I'll try to give you some props. Okay, so that's what that's Slugzoo's contribution, right? He uses Zerglings, and sometimes we'll even throw a net boy in there. Slugzoo's able to make it work with just Zerglings, from my understanding, and then he kind of branches out, and he kind of goes from there. Okay. The next streamer we're going to go over is Autosama, right? So Autosama breaks his guys into melee dudes and thrower dudes, okay? Now, if you notice here, like, this is an example of, like, there's still 6 perks left. These aren't meant to be, like, full builds, necessarily, like, from Autosama's approach. Like, tempo bros only survive the first 5 levels or so for him, or they get recycled or turned into something else. So when you're at this stage of the game, you know, like day 15, 20, 25, you only have a few choices, and the likelihood that you're going to get these bros up to level 11 anyway is pretty low, right? Oh, I'm on the wrong guy. This is Auto-Sama's ranged build, okay? So he goes fast adaptation, dodge, and gifted. Let me see what fucking Auto-Sama says. Yeah. So I asked him, he said, to me, a tempo bro is an early game brother with a very low potential to be a bro that you keep for the late mid game. Their use is to choose immediate power over long-term value. For instance, taking perks that grant the most immediate power, like fast adaptation, dodge, gifted, and Colossus. I asked about the order, and he said, for melee bros, fast adaptation, Colossus for melee bros, okay, and fast adaptation if he's ranged, and then they always take dodge and gifted. That's how he does it, right? So range bros, fast adaptation, melee bros, take Colossus, and then both of them are taking dodge and gifted at the next levels. That's how he builds tempo bros, and that's totally fine. It's very, very minimalist. That's going to get the job done, right? So, you know, there you go. That's Auto-Sama's approach. And lastly, I also reached out to Slurgy, and Slurgy uses something like this. Slurgy is the adopter of the Church of the Spear. He is very pro Spear Bro, and he turns his Spear Bros into late game builds. I haven't mastered quite how to do that yet, but in the early game, this is what he ends up doing. You know, and the idea here is just to maximize tactical positioning by abusing Spear Wall as much as possible. And you have a dedicated Spear Wall bro who is just trying to keep the enemies off of you as much as possible. Sometimes he might have multiple Spear Bros. But you go Colossus, 9 lives, gifted into Spear Mastery. Okay. And then just like Auto-Sama, he separates his ranged. You know, I didn't ask about the order, but I would assume that it would be fast adaptation into quick hands and then Pathfinder into throwing mastery, right? And once again, there's only 4 perks here, right? These are tempo bros. These aren't late game builds that you're going to take into day 100. These bros are day 1 daytailers who don't have great stats, and you're probably going to find better replacements for them, even if they don't die, which they probably will. It's just trying to get the most value out of them as you really can, right? Okay, so I actually forgot one more build that I want to go over, a build tip. This is the Dodge Quick Hands build. I got this build from the Battle Brothers Discord server that you guys can join. This isn't my server. I'm just a person in the server, but there is an official, quote unquote, Battle Brothers Discord server, and they have a hall of builds in there, and one of those builds is the Dodge Quick Hands build. This was posted by a user named M. I don't know if that's always been his name, or her name, their name, but it is the name right now, M. So that's who this is accredited to. He made the post. However, he also put credit goes to Sunbeam for shielding this build. There's another user in here called Sunbeam. I don't know who that is, but that's who gets, those 2 people get the props. This first variation, right, they take Weapon Mastery, and they go something probably like, I don't know, Colossus, Dodge, Gifted, Quick Hands, Weapon Mastery, Pathfinder, Nimble, Berserk, Fearsome, Killing Frenzy. The strategy notes they have is your first 12 guys, not including backliners, should be Dodge Quick Hands. So they're under the opinion that, you know, your, you know, first set of daytailers that you get, build them into this. They can take you into the late game. And Quick Hands is used in tandem with a reach weapon, so a pole arm for added flexibility. They tend to use a barbarian, 2-handed axe, plus a long axe. This build is intended for the early stages of your campaign when you need strong frontline bros. You will slowly phase them out for Battleforge bros over time as they die. However, you can finish all endgame content with this build. And they said credit goes to Sunbeam for showing this build, and Sunbeam has a slight variation. Sunbeam prefers Underdog instead of Axe Mastery, right? And he takes Gifted at level 3 and Dodge at level 4, and Student at 5 if you don't have Mother Weapons. Otherwise, if you don't have multiple weapons, otherwise Quick Hands at 5. So those two builds are also fine, and these can, you know, take you into the late game. Should be okay. This is more of a classic approach, but any of the builds that I showed you guys should definitely be fine. I wouldn't worry about it all that much. Like I said, you don't have to follow any of these templates, but you can definitely follow them exactly if you don't want to use your brain. If you do want to use your brain, you can get a little bit creative and try to blend these together in whatever way works for you and whatever way you think would be good. And it'll probably work out just fine. So these are some examples of actual builds, right? So we've gone over how other streamers, you know, build their bros, and that's totally chill. And you guys can just mindlessly copy any of these, and you'll do fine. Or you can make your own tempo bro if you really want to, by going from the list that I gave over earlier. And that should really be fine. Tempo bros are more of a philosophy rather than an exact build. You don't have to follow these exactly. This is just like an idea, in my opinion. So hopefully this video helps some new players. We got a lot of new players since the new update. You know, go check out Autosama, Slurgy, Some Weird Sins, and Slugzoo, all on Twitch. They're all chill. I'm going to put links to their channels in the description. And, you know, everybody have a good day.